Maybe? Yeah. Okay, I think lots of more people are coming in, but let us keep the time and start. So welcome, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, and friends to this high-level event on implementing biodiversity finance plans and solutions. And thank you all for being here despite the hectic schedule during the high-level segment. So at this COP, maybe I introduce myself. My name is Midori Paxton. I'm heading the ecosystem and biodiversity work at UNDP based in New York. So at this COP, we are celebrating BIOFIN's 10th anniversary. I have myself been involved from the beginning, so it's really nice to be able to do so at this COP. And in this event, we would like to share with you biofin stories from different countries. And these countries have gone through the process of working on the national biodiversity finance plans and implementing various finance solutions. So 10 years ago, with the initial funding from EU, we started a project pioneering the concept of biodiversity finance plan. At that time, I don't think anybody was talking about it. And we first created a methodology for a finance plan. And after rounds of iterations through applications in countries, we now have a fully matured methodology which has been used in over 40 countries. And BIOFIN itself also grew from a pilot project to a large global network of countries, thanks to all of you here. And even outside the BIOFIN program itself, countries like Ireland, Sweden, and most recently, province of Quebec here, had started to design biodiversity finance plans. And I think they have been looking at the BIOFIN methodology. So we have really come a long way over the last 10 years. And we know that this work has generated great interest among many countries and all the parties here. And with new GEF support to over 90 countries, now we will be able to support most of the CBD parties to have a robust biodiversity finance plan, going through really the whole government, whole society approach in developing the plan. So today in this event, we'll be looking back our journey, but also we'd like to look forward as well. So all different aspects, I'm sure, will come out from your remarks. So we'll be hearing from participating countries to BIOFIN, and also from countries that has been supporting BIOFIN for all this time and really championing BIOFIN in the world. And we'll also use this opportunity to launch a new publication investing in the planetary safety net. So there are lots coming in this hour and a half. So now let us move to the official opening. And I'd like to now welcome Honorable Minister Steffi Lemke, Minister of Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection, BMUB, Germany. Minister, floor is yours.
Thank you, Midori Paxton. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your warm welcome. Good afternoon and welcome to this event marking the 10th anniversary of the Biodiversity Finance Initiative. 10 successful years are something to celebrate. Happy birthday, BIOFIN. Around 10 years ago, my ministry decided to support BIOFIN under our international climate initiative, the ECI. I understand 12 countries first led the way in joining the initiative. In the meantime, together with UNDP and many other partners, the internationally recognized and respected BIOFIN approach has been developed. It helps countries determine what funding is available for biodiversity conservation, identify any gaps, and develop funding solutions. Today, the initiative has grown into a global community. We have drawn together an incredible knowledge base and a wealth of experience in mobilizing resources for biodiversity conservation. Thanks to BIOFIN, we have made huge advances in this area. Over the 10 years of its existence, BIOFIN has grown into a family of 40 countries. Many are already implementing their biodiversity finance plans with tangible results. The partner countries themselves will be telling you about that shortly. Funding from the Global Environment Facility will allow more than 100 new partner countries to be supported in drawing up biodiversity finance plans in the coming months and years. That is wonderful news, which we will also celebrate today. It won't surprise you to hear that we consider BIOFIN to be one of our lighthouse initiatives. Its success is undeniable. But what are the reasons behind that success? Undoubtedly, one of the main reasons is the ownership of partner countries and BIOFIN's bottom-up process that is tailored to national circumstances. You colleagues work with a broad intersectional network of stakeholders with environment, finance, planning ministries, and many others. Such an approach can be hard work and calls for stamina on the part of all those involved, especially the national BIOFIN teams. I would like to warmly thank you for your efforts. We and the other supporters of BIOFIN also need staying power, which brings me to a second key reason for BIOFIN success. Cooperation needs time. Success does not happen from one day to the next. And that is particularly true in the case of such a complex matter as biodiversity finance. And however, it is also an enormous challenge because the time window for us to change course on biodiversity is shrinking. I am therefore I'm therefore all the more encouraged to see the BIOFIN family and other financing initiatives continue to grow. Just 2 days ago, I had the honor of launching support under the IKI for the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, TNFD. The topics, public incentives for biodiversity conservation and environmental harmful subsidies, are gaining attention in both BIOFIN and the IKI. Another encouraging initiative is the NBSUB Accelerator Partnership. I believe this partnership is crucial for the technical and financial support needed to implement the goals of the CBD. Incidentally, BIOFIN is also a partner in the NBSUB Accelerator Partnership. That certainly promises well for the success of the partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, such initiatives play a key role in closing the gaps in financing our NBSUBs. A holistic approach is needed here, including, of course, international biodiversity finance. From 2025, Germany will provide 1.5 billion euros a year for biodiversity conservation in developing countries and emerging economies. I'm delighted that the experiences gained by BIOFIN and the many active partners is already being applied in the countries especially, but also here at the negotiations. My thanks to the other supporters of the initiatives, to UNDP, and above all the global BIOFIN team. Thank you for the excellent cooperation over the past 10 years. Let us enjoy this birthday party. I'm looking forward to the other speakers and to our discussions. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Minister Lemke, for your tremendous support and highlighting really the success factors of BIOFIN, which we obviously fully agree. But I think your points were so eloquently said, and thank you so much, and really appropriate for this birthday. And also, I'd like to thank you for your personal commitment for nature and also BMUV's strong support for a large number of really catalytic programs, including what you have just mentioned. And also, I must use this opportunity to thank Germany for the amazing support for BIOFIN for the last 10 years as the largest donor for this initiative. Which really enabled us to significantly scale up our work. So now I have the pleasure to announce a brief presentation by our BIOFIN Global Manager, Onno van den Heuvel, who will share some highlights from the results in the last 10 years. Onno, over to you.
Thank you, Midori. And so my name is Onno van Heuvel. I've been with BIOFIN almost since the beginning, and it's a great moment here to look back on 10 years. And I'll just very briefly give you the kind of history of BIOFIN from where it came from and where it will go to. Maybe many of you know this picture and are afraid I'm going to talk about technical things. I will not. But just to highlight that BIOFIN started as an idea to do three things, help with three things: helping countries to measure how much they're spending on biodiversity, how much finance they need. And then the third and most important thing is to develop some kind of strategy, how we can then close the funding gap in a country. But probably you can't read it, but a very important element was added there at the bottom, is to also implement this plan in particular. And I think it looks very intuitive that we're doing that, but perhaps it's not if you look at many other plans. I think it's very significant to have this very dedicated step of implementation. And In the beginning, it was just 12 countries, and now we've moved to 41. And with the GF support, well, we have to see how many countries sign up, of course, but there's room for many. And then that was the early days when we developed the methodology and tested it in countries, learned, and then spread the word. And BIOFIN grew to more countries. And the first wave of national biodiversity finance plans emerged. And we started to learn more, and we developed actually another second tool, which is, I think it's not, yeah. It's not shown here, but you can use your imagination, of course. Yeah. But it's called the Catalog of Biodiversity Finance Solutions. So what we did was we mapped any financing mechanism we found all around the world, including things like fintech, lotteries, Islamic finance, things with insurance. They're always added. And this is the menu of options for your finance plan. So this is the kind of menu that any country can choose from and picks ideas, combined with ideas that already are alive and kicking in a country. They're merged together into one biodiversity finance plan. So let's see then what happened with those plans, because I mentioned we have a step of implementation. And around 2019-20s, the first countries reached this implementation stage. And you can see here the beautiful nature that we are trying to help conserve with these actions. Thank you. I think first example that I would like to highlight comes from the Philippines, where they have the beautiful tarsier that of course is protected in one of the parks there. And we helped the country to develop a new budget proposal after we first filled in a gap of the legislation. They found there a lot of protected areas there formally proclaimed, but not part of the legislation, and therefore not receiving finance. And so we helped to fill this gap. It's a 3-year sequencing. The first year, the legislation was amended. The second year, regulations were amended to introduce public-private partnership and many other mechanisms. And the third year, we worked on a $40 million budget proposal that was approved by the parliament and the president for 3 years for the protected areas of Philippines. Second example comes from the beautiful bird you see on the right. We worked also on green bonds, in particular green sukuk in Indonesia, where the issue is that green bonds are on the rise in the world. It's a huge market, billions or maybe soon trillions. But if you start to look for biodiversity, it becomes very small suddenly. And so we have to build the pipeline. So here we help to identify a project for a new bird conservation center in the Malacca Islands. And we managed to secure an investment of $2.7 million. And third, the beautiful landscape there is actually from Kazakhstan, one of the countries that that is also sharing here. And we had some really early results there, working on legislation related to protected areas and biodiversity offsetting. We hope to hear more. Those were it was one of the best early results that we have had. So let's go to the next one. And now, in the last years, we see more and more results emerging, maturing into finance results. So I'm going to just share with you 3 more. The first picture there is the Vice President of Costa Rica. She was spearheading our crowdfunding campaign in Costa Rica. And the last years, it brought around $1.8 million from public sector, private sector, and individuals. Next is a picture from Koh Tao Island. We have some delegates from Thailand here. It's one of the best examples. April this year, a new island fee, visitation fee, was introduced. Every tourist pays about $1. It goes in a fund for coral restoration, waste management, and alternative lives. And last but not least, that's a picture of Bogota in Colombia. They just introduced, as a city, a payment for ecosystem service system for nature, and putting $2 million into that. So some very concrete finance results that I want to share. And let's go to the next slide. So what's in the future? What are our next plans? So we, of course, with the support from the GF, will scale up through a sister program of BIOFIN, the design of national biodiversity finance plans. But we also want to scale up the implementation of finance plans to see that some countries are really closing the finance gap. And we have 3 signature solutions there. We want to work on results-based budgeting or public budgeting, repurposing subsidies, and working with the finance sector as a very strategic entry point. I think that's the last part. And yeah, 2 more things that we are launching right now. So we have a country stories report that's going online right now. And we have also a new database of finance sources that will help countries find important financing opportunities. So I'm going to leave it at that, and back to you, Midori.
Thank you very much, Onno, for all these great examples. But these are just a glimpse of a large body of results and progress we have seen through BIOFIN. So I hope we hear more about that in this session and also in the reports and on our website. So I'd like to now move to the first country, which will be Norway. In addition to supporting BIOFIN, Norway has a long track record of supporting UN-RED and other important mechanisms. And I'd like to now introduce Ambassador Hans Brattskar, Special Envoy for Climate and Environment, Ministry of Climate and Environment, Norway. The Honorable Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this meeting. And I'm very happy to be here on behalf of my Minister Espen Barth Eide, and like to join others in congratulating BIOFIN with its first 10 years and 10 years of very important work. And my country, Norway, has been a proud supporter of BIOFIN since 2015, and we know that BIOFIN provides support needed to create sustainable national finance solutions for biodiversity. We also know that BIOFIN can implement a new global biodiversity framework starting today, so we're very happy about that. I'm also very happy to be able to, on behalf of my minister, to announce today Norway's continued and scale up support for BIOFIN, and we will support BIOFIN with a total of 120 million Norwegian kroner over the next 3 years. So this is a happy announcement. We very much look forward to a continued fruitful cooperation with all our friends in BIOFIN. You also mentioned UN-RED, and that points me to another example of Norway's strong support for preserving nature and reducing climate change. And we do that through the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative. And I think the German minister talked about the need to look at the long term. And NICFI, as we call it, the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative, was launched back in 2008. And I had the pleasure of being the first director of the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative. It works in 8 countries and the Congo Basin to save the world's tropical forests with our partner countries, while at the same time improving livelihoods of all the people who live in these forests. The overall goal of NICFI is reduced and reverse loss of tropical forest. It will enable a stable climate. It will preserve biodiversity and sustainable development. So these are the 3 very much interlinked goals that we have had all along. It's the climate part of it, the carbon part of it, it's the biodiversity part of it, but that's also very much part of sustainable development strategy. So we work with tropical forest countries that are committed to reduce deforestation and forest degradation. The main model for us is to pay tropical forest countries for the results they deliver in terms of reduced emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. From 2008 to 2020, we paid 10 billion Norwegian kroner, that's about 1 billion euros, just to do the math in current terms. And we paid these 10 million Norwegian crowns for 300 million tons reduced emissions in Brazil, Guyana, Colombia, and Ecuador. So this is a very significant achievement by these countries that we are happy to work with. And I can also say the first result-based contribution to Indonesia we had this year 595 million Norwegian kroner for the forest year 2016 to 17. Indonesia has reported on reduced deforestation for 5 years in a row, and it's actually now at the lowest level in 20 years. So I think Indonesia has done an incredible job in reducing its deforestation rate. We also support in the enabling environment, including through national funds. Now, I'd like also to stress that we support indigenous peoples and local communities in their territorial management of rainforest. These are, as we know, very effective guardians of the forest, and we are proud of this part of our work as well. Let me also mention something that is quite new, and that's the LEAF Coalition. It's the biggest public-private partnership for reducing emissions from forest. It was launched in 2021. It has so far mobilized $1.5 billion from 4 countries and a number of international companies. I think now it's more than 20 international companies. And the latest ones to join are Volkswagen and H&M. They have just joined the LEAF Coalition. The coalition has signed agreements with Costa Rica, Ecuador, Nepal, and 4 Brazilian states as well. And it uses the so-called R3 standard, which has very high environmental and social safeguards. And I also like to congratulate Guyana in South America on being the first country to issue forest carbon credits certified by ART. And this is paving the way for many others to come in the future. And we have worked with Guyana for many years now. I think I was there first in 2009. And this is really something that marks a breakthrough for the emergence of high-quality global carbon market to protect tropical forests. So this is an example of Guyana leading the way. It has demonstrated that it's possible to protect rainforest over time through dedicated strategic work with partners across government, private sector, and civil society. As I said, we have been proud to be a partner with Guyana since 2009. And it's therefore great for us to see that Guyana is fulfilling its vision to mobilize significant international private capital for protecting its forest and in support of low carbon developments, its low carbon development strategy. This is really a concrete example of a country mobilizing private capital, which is of course something we are talking about endlessly at this conference as well. So this is a concrete example of a success story. So we have seen that climate finance schemes for tropical rainforest for some time has focused on areas that have reduced high levels of deforestation. This is also important with the news from Guyana, is that so-called high forest cover, low deforestation countries can benefit from the work we are doing. So I believe this is something that we will look to as kind of the first step in a direction that I think is very exciting and that can lead to a successful work to protect forest and rich biodiversity over time. So thank you for letting me have this opportunity to make this intervention. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and for your new announcement for new contribution to BIOFIN as well. I really like to express our gratitude for Norway's really continued and now scaled support, and also the catalytic investment in most critical areas of biodiversity conservation you have been making around the world. And I think Norway's support is also showing us the example of how we can link the climate and biodiversity issues, because we all know that we are facing the dual crisis, climate, biodiversity crisis, so intertwined. That means we really need integrated solutions. And so thank you for showing how to do that in practice across the world. So now I'd like to turn to Belize. We have here Honorable Minister Orlando Habet, as well as Honorable Vice Minister Kenrick Williams, Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change, and Disaster Risk Management. So that already, the ministry's name really shows how you're recognizing the interlinkages between different development challenges. So, Vice Minister Williams, Belize has been a pioneer in blue finance. Please share with us your story around BIOFIN.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. We're grateful to be invited to this birthday party for the BIOFIN program. And we're certainly excited to hear of the gifts being shared as well. Going going forward, there's nothing better than a party with more gifts. We're grateful. We're really grateful for that. The Belize story, I think, has been an interesting one, being in the process of its unfolding. I serve as the policy and institutional advisor in the ministry in 2016. So we started as a policy advisor looking at the institutional architecture for the broader finance for biodiversity in Belize. And of course, we went through the process of carrying out the policy and institutional review, and then the finance needs assessment and developing the biodiversity finance plan, and looking at what are some of the key finance solutions. For Belize, what we thought was very important was the institutional architecture that would carry this forward. And I think this is the important area we saw in terms of making the investment. And so, an outcropping of this process was the establishment of the National Biodiversity Office, which was an office that would be specifically dedicated to the biodiversity and protected areas management going forward. You see, the historical architecture was that the forest department was the one that managed biodiversity and protected areas. But this is a sector that managed extractive resources, not exactly champion the management and long-term conservation of protected areas. And so the National Biodiversity Office was established in 2020 with the blessings of the Honorable Minister and the government of today. And it is through this mechanism that we're then able to roll out much of the unique and innovative finance solutions that we've developed over time. So this office have really helped to strengthen then the broader policy and institutional framework for biodiversity management in Belize. For instance, the rolling out of a co-management agreement with protected areas co-managers on the ground so that communities, civil societies, NGOs can serve as partners in the management of protected areas across Belize. The support of training in using smart technologies to support the management of these protected areas, the implementation of a biodiversity investment impact tracking tool. So we can monitor the resources that are being invested in protected areas and biodiversity management. Because sometimes in these countries, it's not exactly just that there's not enough money, but that the money is not being targeted. And so this type of mechanism can help us then to target where these resources need to be invested so that we're having the type of returns on investments and we're having the type of impact that we want from these investments. And then lastly, of course, building this office have helped us to build capacity of the local communities. So we've identified the partners and the stakeholders and the communities. And these communities have also identified the finance opportunities at the downscaled opportunities. And so this office have helped to build the training and the capacities of these communities to mobilize resources, look at innovative investments. They've been able to then work with private sector, for instance, and leverage, collaborative opportunities, financing opportunities within these community-based protected areas. For example, there are opportunities to develop, small-scale eco-lodges, for example, through partnerships with the private sector who have the investments, or small-scale tour operating opportunities. So then there can be realizing of financing for communities, but as well as for private sector engagement in the process. And so when private sector is involved, they're going to then support the monitoring and the enforcement and the protection of these areas because they're generating returns for all that are involved, and then it helps us to meet our biodiversity targets. So I think these are some of the interesting experiences of Belize. And because then we continue to build the capacity of the champions, therefore we have been able to build that sort of long-term sustainability into the process for Belize. So just a bit of the Belize experience.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister. It's really impressive to hear how much Belize has achieved within with limited resources. Right? BIOFIN country program is not huge, right? But I think you have been able to make the most of that, and to the extent that you're institutionalizing biodiversity finance work within the government to be able to deliver enhanced services to society and communities. So thank you so much for showing the world an exemplary work. So now let us move to Africa, to Botswana. Botswana is a pioneer in sustainable development, and we know that you have some excellent results around protected areas through BIOFIN project as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce Honorable Minister Vida Nani Karen, Minister of Environment, Natural Resources, Conservation and Tourism. Minister, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Let me also join the family BIOFIN in celebrating the birthday. Happy birthday, BIOFIN, with all the successes. I think you should have gotten a cake. There's too much bread around. Just gather the bread on the aisles and bring it here. And let's have a toast. I think it is quite a moment to celebrate 10 years of impact and support to our countries. I'm from Botswana in Southern Africa, the home to the largest population of African elephants. Let me mention that. In addition to other iconic species, we are home to the Okavango Delta, the most sensitive, most valuable, the Chobe River, the Kalahari Desert, and so forth. And I must say that, our biodiversity is the key product in our tourism offer. So that is why I'm Minister of Environment and Tourism. We have shortened the name now. We can make some amendments there. So we don't waste energy in talking about the long name, but we can get into actions. It's environment and tourism because for many years we have been selling the tourism destination Botswana for people who come to enjoy the experience of our biodiversity in the delta, in our rivers, seeing all kinds of, wild animals, lions, and just enjoying nature that we have preserved for such a long time. And I must say also that it is a sole responsibility over many years of government managing these resources, preserving and protecting it with the communities, using, voluntary spirit of, self-reliance and valuing these resources as an economic resource that must be protected by each and every individual. So the government has long history of policies, legislations, and community-based programs that support community involvement in the preservation of this biodiversity. We pride ourselves as a country in having preserved our forests, in having maintained good governance around natural resources to the point that we've got growing numbers, not declining, of all these elephants. I want to invite you to Botswana and see how elephants roam your town, and the people are saying as long as we know we're benefiting from them, they are part of us and they are involved in valuing that and preserving the species. But there's a problem that I think BIOFIN came at the right time when we realized, with continuing contracting government resources for maintaining national parks and game reserves, maintaining wildlife, maintaining all administrative and operational demands of biodiversity protection and preservation for the industries like tourism to thrive. It has been quite heavy on government. And I want to say also, in that light, that with COVID-19, we saw government, actually struggling to, meet a lot of its operational, obligations when we had to actually get a lot of our funds across the ministries to cushion COVID-19 and to assist, the economic sectors to continue, for instance, keeping the employees so that after recovery don't go back to zero, and the tourism sector being prioritized, as a sector that needed, and we lost a lot of money just for COVID. Now, with that, I wish to say that we woke up to the need for alternative financing, we also woke up, thanks to BIOFIN, to the fact that we cannot keep offering a valuable resource for private sector to thrive, selling iconic, high value tourism destinations in our parks, in the Delta, and yet not being able to help contribute to the maintenance, of the park roads, the park bridges, the signages, biodiversity, and all that, including also controlling pollution and restoring degraded land because of climate change impacts. So BIOFIN, came through for us, although it was way back in 2012, but we see how it was actually building us towards resilience, towards, understanding the value of these resources, and actually deliberately as government beginning to see that we need to do something, about getting, revenues from what we sell. So BIOFIN has helped us, with institutional reforms in terms of policies, in terms of strategies like Wildlife and National Parks Act. We've reviewed those to ensure that we can actually bring out value, in the resources. Natural resources conservation strategy, how do we best conserve, but mostly to facilitate economic growth, livelihood improvement for people living around in the national parks, people suffering from wildlife-human conflict, when the elephants get into their farms and they destroy the boreholes, destroy the crops. And, when an elephant wants to scratch its back, it has to bring down a tree, and to recover the lost biodiversity. And then, also because we are also an integrated government, my ministry chairs the thematic working group that coordinates all biodiversity related programs across different ministries. So we chair the sustainable, environment group within the vision and the national planning mechanism of the country. So agriculture, land, water, health, education, local government, they are all under that thematic working group. So we're doing a lot of, integrated intervention. So we were assisted in reviewing all these strategies and frameworks, and also we were assisted through this funding to review our biodiversity expenditure. How much is government spending on keeping the wildlife rangers, making sure that they have proper housing, proper, working vehicles, they've got the computers in the offices, they can go into the parks and maintain, and all that, uniforms, protective clothing, fighting poaching, and so forth. Huge bill. But what are we doing? Look at the value of this resource and begin to package revenue collection that will help us to augment government funding so that we can keep these parks, keep the forests, keep the wildlife, and keep biodiversity intact, for business and especially tourism. So we were assisted to review, all the expenditure, and I must say that we realized that more than 700 billion US dollars needed for us just to keep, this. All of it from government, but we are saying no, with now the transformation that we are in right now, especially at the wake of COVID-19, we realized we need partners, we need triple Ps, we need more of our communities, and we need to incentivize what used to be free service from communities, just, protecting and helping us to manage, biodiversity preservation. So that helped us, and we needed to also do through BIOFIN, strategies that will bridge the gaps, in financing, and we were assisted. I'll come to just that small point in a bit. So we developed, a financing plan, which included a very interesting activity reviewing the park fees, which had not been reviewed for 20 years. So you run a lodge, a tourism enterprise inside a park or close to a park. Every day you are getting tourists into the park. They get the best experience. They can pay for 10,000 US dollars per room. I'm just giving an example, some of the high value operations that we have there. And then a signboard is broken, the bridge is broken, the road is not. Can't we work together because of the value that we see together, that we must preserve together? So this is what this helped us to actually look at the fact that we have not increased park fees for a long time, and we did. But there's a political flip of it, because I'm being grilled for, making it difficult for people to access the park. Yeah, why don't you revise? Now I've gone back to cabinet to say maybe this and that one we can revise. But I'm still saying to my operators, can you subsume this within your valuable product pricing so that we can keep working together to maintain this. So it's a political but also a very strategic issue to work around. I want to help them so that they can know how to best work with government. So sustainable utilization, ecological management, and restoration of our protected areas is key. And we recently enacted the ABS, access and benefit sharing legislation, that is going to help us to, at the end of the day, build a whole economy around biodiversity, protection, adaptation, mitigation. But as we restore land, we are engaging communities and they benefit from it. Because we also have special funds that I just want to touch to say that we have got national environmental fund, we have got other funds, special funds that help us to finance young people, women, community groups, and other community trusts that help us to manage our resources. So we are looking at BIOFIN having actually helped us to see the value. So now when we've seen the value, we begin to introduce different activities that will help us to educate all people, all actors, and all beneficiaries of biodiversity that you have a role to play, because this is feeding you. This is going to be your next generation's job, because we are building a whole economy around wildlife, natural resource, the developed products, and also climate actions. So maybe because of time, I just want to say that I see opportunities in BIOFIN. Even as COP15 is charting a way for the next chapters in terms of what you need to be doing. We want, as Botswana, through the ABS legislation and this transformational agenda of government, to create jobs, to build a whole economic growth path, and also help to have an inclusive economy where we can be able to use or profile our natural resources and biodiversity as an economic resource. Once we have made that strategic vision, then all ministries, all programs speak to that. Job creation, livelihood improvement, inclusivity, private public partnerships, infrastructure development. So when we do budgeting, we are budgeting to create economies. So the economy is the one that activates the value, for everyone to see. So now this is the problem we will be having. Access, exploitation, utilization of our biological resources. You would find that there's a very special worm called Mopani worm that our local communities will collect, and then they dry in the sun, in the harsh conditions, in the bush, and then they just load and export. We want to create industries that can process that product, the animal feed, those chocolates, those snacks, those packages, so that we create jobs internally, within and as we're driving an export-led economy. So now what do we need to do? They export the raw material like we used to do with diamonds. Now we are turning to say, now we need to do diamond beneficiation and create jobs locally. And we are beginning to explore through the ABS legislation, one, profiling of these natural resources, giving them value, and actually building an economy. So I'm here with Botswana Digital Innovation Hub CEO, I think is right behind me, who are helping us. We are also going to get the assistance in terms of digital transformation, profiling, digital profiling of the resource, and then attaching value, and then getting innovation. What can we do with this? Medicinal, it is health benefits from this plant, and it is cosmetics and all that, so that you don't just get people coming as it's happening. To do research, they do interviews with our community people who carry indigenous knowledge, and then they just go. We want to also, through our intellectual property rights that we have just introduced, to ensure that traditional indigenous knowledge is also a resource that people can benefit from, and we can deal with poverty with our natural resources because we are endowed with them. So I see those opportunities in natural resource economy, innovation, the digital transformation, and inclusivity, job creation, and then we are ready to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for the wonderful story from Botswana, making the clear linkage between wildlife, people's livelihood, and local and national economies. And also, you have shared with us great examples of domestic finance mechanisms, which obviously, if we are talking about closing the current biodiversity finance gap, of course, ODA is very important. and or other mechanisms are important, but domestic finance is one of the most important pieces, I think, of the puzzle. And I was also very encouraged that the Botswana has been using BIOFIN in a way that catalyzes necessary change for strengthening the national protected area system. So thank you very much for your interventions. And now I'd like to invite Ms. Anne-Marie van der Voort, who will speak on behalf of the Honorable Minister, Zakia Khattabi, Minister of Climate, Environment, Sustainable Development and the Green Deal, Belgium. Please.
Very much for allowing me to be here. Apologies that my minister at the last minute couldn't attend. For me, it's very refreshing to be here. I've been here for a few weeks now, and it's very refreshing to be here at his birthday party and talk about real solutions on the ground. So thank you very much. I have to acknowledge my colleagues in the back, the government of Flanders, because they have been very inspiring to us. They have been supporting BIOFIN since 2016. And inspired by that, the federal government joined also their efforts in 2021. So very recently, but already following up on their activities for a long time. So as you rightly said, Ms. Paxton, domestic resource mobilization is very important. It's crucial to our effort here for a global biodiversity framework, but we really want to support that effort, and that's where BIOFIN comes in. It offers a really interesting methodology. What speaks to me is that it's not about a shiny plan. It's about a capacity building effort, about strengthening institutions, about exploring different options, and then making the policy choices on the basis of sound data. And I've been very pleased to hear about all of these interesting examples of Belize and Botswana, and looking forward to hearing more. We are supporting BIOFIN in Niger. I learned that the team has just been assembled and is ready to kickstart now. So we are really looking forward. Why Niger? That's. I want to talk a little bit about that, because that's how we see that BIOFIN is complementary to our other efforts. We have a program that supports capacity building for biodiversity of scientific institutions and also other institutions, national biodiversity focal points in our partner countries. You might know, some of the people in the room might know Han de Kooijer. He's negotiating on capacity building for the EU, but he also travels around in Africa to support his colleagues on clearinghouse mechanisms and others. And that's where he met his colleagues in Niger, and they talked about BIOFIN, and then they came to us. So it's all very complementary to our other efforts. And now we are also going to start a program on protected areas management in Burundi very soon. I think the agreement was just signed in Bujumbura this week, and there it's part of a larger program also within the EU. We support a pillar of a wider EU program, and our development agency will also come in for another pillar. So I think it's very important for us as donors to bring all of these efforts as much as possible together, and to also make it as easy as possible for our partners. So we are providing this seed money, and therefore we also really welcome, and I think Norway also spoke about that, about umbrella program developed by the Global Environment Facility, and we are really very happy. I think it's a very nice birthday gift maybe for BIOFIN to be able to scale up and to go there where they haven't been gone before. And then something maybe we are also doing is, and I think it's also about the connection between climate change and biodiversity. We are also supporting in some of our partner countries the local climate adaptive living capacity facility of UNCDF. And this is an approach also to strengthen countries' planning and budget mechanisms. It's not exactly the same as BIOFIN, but I do think that there are connections to be made, and I think it's worthwhile to be explored. And that's designed to support climate action for adaptation at the local level, and to make sure that the climate finance that's in the big global funds also works for local communities. So all very interesting initiatives that we need to make sure that work together. The minister, who's not here unfortunately, has biodiversity and its conservation, restoration, sustainable use, and mainstream high on the political agenda. So also at home, we are increasing efforts to do this through all sectors and policy areas. We have the big initiatives like green bonds, like fiscal incentives, eco labels as well. I want to talk, and then I'm going to finish because I really look forward to hearing from Kazakhstan. Something that's, to me as a citizen of my country, also speaks is that there have been developed lots of initiatives on citizen science, involve citizens in collecting data on biodiversity, on monitoring soil in gardens, on monitoring biodiversity in cities, also on clean air, and it helps scientists because you get a lot of more samples of data, so you get a bigger picture. It helps to monitor how we are doing on biodiversity and how climate change is impacting our biodiversity, because we are but it's also this way of gathering data also gives insights in how their own choices have an impact on nature in their immediate environment, and make them seek for solutions that will help us preserve our biodiversity better together. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and yes, very joyful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. We are very grateful for the strong support by Belgium through the federal government and the government of Flanders, and for your leadership in really resource mobilization and finance discussions here at COP around the GBF. So last but by far not the least, but quite the contrary, let's hear from Kazakhstan. We know Kazakhstan has been very successful in embedding several financing solutions into national legislation. So, Honorable Minister Alia Sharabekova, Vice Minister of Ecology, Geology and Natural Resources, Kazakhstan.
Thank you.
Please tell us your story.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of the Ministry of Ecology, Geology and Natural Resources, I welcome meeting participants. Let me present the key results of Global Biodiversity Finance Initiative in my country. Since independence, Kazakhstan has been a party to many environmental agreements and platforms, and in 2013, Kazakhstan joined the BIOFIN, UNDP Biodiversity Finance Initiative, BIOFIN. And currently, we have 6 finance solutions implementing in Kazakhstan. First, strengthening protected areas management planning for improved financing. For this purpose, the new rules of developing protected areas management plan have been adopted by focusing on financial planning issues. Management plans of 16 pilot protected areas have been updated. Nowadays, protected area staff are being trained, and this training is available on the UN Learning for Nature platform. Second, introduction of biodiversity offsets as a formal instrument in Kazakhstan. In 2021, a new environmental code was adopted with an innovative mechanism for our country, biodiversity offsets. Before changing the legislation, biodiversity offsets were piloted. In Western Kazakhstan, the national oil and gas operator started the exploitation of gas field nearby nature reserve. According to the conducted research, exploration activities had high environmental risks. BIOFIN experts have developed the measures to prevent, minimize, and mitigate and offset losses resulting from the exploration project. As a result, after long discussion, the project has been suspended. To ensure the applicability of biodiversity offsets by industrial companies, we are planning to improve the bylaws even further. Third, state subsidizing of wildlife breeding. In 2019, Kazakhstan under BIOFIN started to work on implementation of positive subsidies for wildlife. The aim of a finance solution is providing a state subsidy to hunting concessions for wildlife breeding with followed partial release into the wild. It resolves the problem of pressure on natural population of endangered animals and reduces poaching. In this context, the rules for subsidizing rare, endangered, and endemic animal species breeding have been drafted. The new Wildlife Conservation and Sustainable Use Act will be prepared to ensure the sustainability of this finance solution. Fourth, creating a basis for ecotourism certification. We are currently observing a high demand for tourism in protected areas. According to the statistics, last year about 1.5 million people visited protected areas, and within 10 months of this year, the figure reached 1.7 million. To assure the sustainable development of tourism destinations and biodiversity conservation, the ecotourism certification system has been improved. Currently, the national standard for ecotourism is revised in accordance with international criteria. Fifth, forest carbon offsets. Our country has adopted climate change commitments to reduce emissions by 15% compared to 1990 and to become carbon neutral by 2016. Forests play an important role in achieving these commitments. The new environmental code already includes a mechanism of carbon offsets. We are currently working on introduce of forest carbon offsets in national legislation. This mechanism will cover large-scale activities to increase forest area, firefighting, and many more. And lastly, Bitfury project. As a part of BIOFIN in 2019, we launched the first full-scale tripartite project between Ministry of Ecology, UNDP, and Bitfury, national blockchain company, for 1.5 million US dollars. This project aims to conserve over 100,000 hectares of previously unmanaged forests and to create a green space of 20 hectares. In conclusion, dear colleagues, I would like to note that BIOFIN is a significant opportunity to showcase innovative finance solutions to address the funding gap for biodiversity and environmental issues in general. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister, for introducing multiple finance solutions you have been working on, and again, the importance of legislating some of those solutions for long-term impact and permanence. So this wraps up the panel discussion part, but I think there are a few more speakers. So I'm handing back to Onno briefly before coming to the final segment.
Yes, very inspiring stories, and we just put up the slide here of our new country stories publications that you can find on biofin.org. And there are a few more people in the room who had requested to share their story, and we have somebody from Mexico here who would like to share about some of the work that's done there, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Onno. I'll be brief. Well, in Mexico, we have implemented BIOFIN since 2015. The first 3 years, we developed the information, well, regarding expenditure, the policy and institutional review, the financial needs assessment, and we also developed our first biodiversity finance plan. Since then, we have been working in implementing, as Onno said at the beginning. It might sound obvious, but it's a work in progress. It's a progressive implementation, and going back, trying to strengthen this implementation plan. And we have been having great results, not only at the federal level, but also working with subnational levels. Some of you might have heard in this week the ministers of Guanajuato, Yucatan, and the ex-minister of Jalisco sharing also their experiences with BIOFIN. And well, just as a quick example, in Mexico City, working with them, we managed to save a yearly, 60 million pesos, which they equivalent to $3 million each year for biodiversity, just by changing some regulations and policies in the state or city trust fund. Like these examples, we have another examples in other states. We have been working also in developing federal funds like the National Climate Change Fund, as well as the Sustainable Fund with the biggest development bank in Mexico. So development banks are also starting to acknowledge the role of biodiversity and making some plans to increase their impact and investments on biodiversity. And finally, we are currently working a lot with the financial sector, the public financial sector and regulators, in order to build and integrate information regarding biodiversity into national taxonomies. So well, that's a work in progress. We look forward to keep the hard work in Mexico and also sharing with the region and also with our other BIOFIN projects around the world. And we thank a lot for the support and the trust all of you have in BIOFIN for the last 10 years and the years to come. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks, and great to hear from Mexico. And I think one actually of the people involved in the program is also here. And if you would be willing to share some of your experiences. You, yeah.
I think the lady.
Yeah. So I couldn't remember your name. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm Guadalupe Yesenia Hernandez Marquez. I'm Zapotec, on the Zapotec Nation, and we are working in BIOFIN in a very interesting and very complete program. It's working with the Mezcal Guardians. The Mezcal Guardians is a group of women that is producing this spirit. Mezcal is similar, like tequila, but we're working on the capacity building. One of the most important achievements is the awareness of what is a bioeconomy and why we must to work on this way in sustainable bioeconomy, and working on gender and biodiversity issues, and of course in producing mezcal, but take care in the environment, especially the wild species of agave and their genetic diversity. And one of the key points in our second phase of the plan is that they are producing in home gardens, because we got a fund from BIOFIN, but for the gender aspects and gender challenges, the women, they are mothers, wives, etc., and they can't not to put the place where to produce agave, and they divide, and they are producing in home gardens agaves to sell as a to plant, or in 5 or more years ago to produce mezcal, and they divide. But it's amazing to see how the husband has the sons, daughter are take caring with them, with all the women, and the plants, the small plants. And maybe if it's possible, I can share with you the link to a video of the Mezcal Guardians, the gender, and the other challenge is that the women are not visible in the mezcal activity. Mezcal is growing. We are facing a boom mezcalero that it's also producing, or it's a driver of biodiversity crisis, because many persons in Oaxaca and in Mexico are promoting the line change use, and the mezcal guardians, they are producing agave to plant in the wild ecosystems. And I invite all of you to know this very complete, and with how we are changing the lives from the families, from the women, with biofin resources. Many thanks. In my language, thanks is Stishubu and Stishubu.
Thank you. Very inspiring story. Thank you so much for joining us here. We're almost moving towards the closing. We just have a few minutes left, and I know that Caroline from the Netherlands would briefly like to share on some thinking about how we can scale up the work on blended financing mechanisms in a similar style to the way the BIOFIN process is working. So, Caroline, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Caroline van Leendes. I work for the Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality of the Netherlands. And we have been working on a little paper where we think it would be of interest for every country to have a blended finance facility for biodiversity. In this paper, we have some reasons why we think it would be good to implement such a facility on national level, because it could connect to the MBSEPs, it could connect to what the biomes need in every country, because the needs are so different in every country. It could also connect to the local infrastructure that is already there, the development banks and the great work that is already being done in different countries. Also, when you implement such a facility on a national level, you can include women, you can include youth groups, you can include indigenous peoples in the governance structures of such facilities. So we made a little note to see if people have an interest in such a way of thinking. If you have, please reach out. It's there to share. It's a collective idea. It's not Dutch, it's for everybody. We don't have a blended finance facility for biodiversity in the Netherlands either. So we also don't know how to do it. We would really like to pick it up together with BIOFIN. This idea comes from a process that we worked together with BIOFIN for the last year and a half. And we also collected now 22 examples of blended finance from all over the world for biodiversity, because we have to find a way to see how we can mobilize all this private finance. There were so many private financials here at this COP for the first time saying, yeah, we want to invest, but it's not easy. And so to learn from one another, to bring it to a country level, to a national level, that's a thought we have. So if you're interested in this paper, if you want to share collective thinking, please find me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and your partnership throughout BIOFIN and TNFD and other journeys we have together. So this has been a very inspiring and encouraging discussion, and a very jolly, in a way, birthday party for BIOFIN. So it's now a great pleasure to announce for the closing reflections by Ms. Florica Fink Hoyer, Director General of DG Environment EU Commission. The European Union was the founding partner of the BIOFIN in 2012 and continues to be a strong supporter and champion of the BIOFIN today. So it'd be great if you could quickly reflect on the last 10 years of support, but also highlight how this links to the ongoing discussion here in GBF, or whatever you're prepared to say. Thank you.
I will try to square that circle. But first of all, thank you very much, UNDP, but also CBD Secretariat, but also the Global Environment Facility for hosting this event. I think it has been very inspiring and very good to hear all these powerful examples, how BIOFIN really delivers on the ground. I think this is the best campaign that we can have to get others into BIOFIN, right? And I would like to pick up on something which the Honorable Minister from Botswana said. She said, we want to build a whole economy around biodiversity. I like that very much. And that's what we all try, because all of our economies ultimately depend very much on intact biodiversity. But if you want to do this successful, you need to have financial sound plans. And I think this is where BIOFIN initiatives comes in. Indeed, we are supporting it as the EU, and I'm speaking here for the EU since 2012. And let's also say very happy birthday to all of us for this implementation, to all of us, because now it's already 40 countries. I think that's great, and I hope this is increasing. When you said, like, how does it fit and relates to the discussion that we have here, I think one is clear. It is that BIOFIN is a very smart funding tool, and it's innovative. And I think this is where we want to look at. I mean, I know very much that we have to close a funding gap, and that's correct, and that's also legitimate. But we would like to suggest doing this in a very innovative and smart way. And that means we really have to tap many, many more financing sources. ODA, extremely important, has to stay. We are committed, and that's also our duty. But we need to tap more. And that's why I would say here we can get some inspiration, especially because it delivers on the ground. I was really heartened to hear whether it is now in Kazakhstan, very, very specific context, or in Botswana, and I'm very sorry I missed out on Belize, but all, or on the gender in Mexico, it demonstrates you can really bring change to the ground, but preserve nature and create jobs, right? Because it's also about livelihoods and job stability and all of this. So that is what I would take. And picking up on the last interventions also, this idea of using different funding techniques, right? Do it not only grants, also debt and equity, green bonds, very interesting, or guarantees. I mean, blend it and then you scale up. And I think that's what we have to look at. A few takeaways from this event here, which also might be inspiring for how we want to go ahead on closing the funding gap that we have. And I can say for the Union, we will also help on doing that. But it is not just about writing checks. It's not just about the money transfer. It's about how we can access it, how facilitating we can make it in order to have the different communities benefiting from it. And again, also having this mix with governments, industries, and local communities. So I think it's a bit different. So I had 4 points that I thought we could take as something like lessons learned, or at least achievements that we have done. I think, first of all, BIOFIN is effective. I mean, one should not, I mean, you might take it for granted, but as it is innovative, it is also good to say, no, it is delivering. So it is good because it is this integration of biodiversity into really public finance, but also in financial planning. And I think that's very important. That's why I very much, I'm with what the Minister from Botswana said, because we need to leverage finance on that. I think the second takeaway for me, especially having listened here, is the advantage of BIOFIN is that it's very tailor-made. Tailor-made also to the specificities on the ground or for the country. And I think that's also a lessons learned. And it tackles basically this financing in a very logic and very systemic way. Yeah? It's really meeting specific needs, but in a planned approach, while not losing the overall sight. And the third, I think, takeaway for me would be, we have this 5-step BIOFIN methodology. I think that helps keeping biodiversity really relevant in the financing, that you also demonstrate the externalities. I think this, indirectly, we heard about it. It's about the all these footprints. And there's an ecological footprint, there's a biodiversity footprint, there's a planetary footprint. So this planning has to be taken in. And this is something which in normal administrative or budgetary processes is often not taken into account. So I think that's a strong methodology that we also should take inspiration from. And finally, I think what it is also, it brings a bit this much needed increase in competing policy documents, right? You have the MB subs, right? But you also have other, let's say, NDCs. It all has to match together. Some already mentioned it. You have climate financing and you have biodiversity financing. It should reinforce each other and not crowd each other out, right? So I think that is something we collectively can be very proud of. I think that's very good. We have to move forward, and I now took stock, but I think we should also look forward, and that is aligning what we now have heard here to also the GBF. And I'm very hopeful, and I still optimistic that we will come out with a high ambition GBF. And that's why I think all the colleagues here around the table, you care for nature, you care for your biodiversity, your specific biodiversity, and therefore we need to really align that in the GBF. I think therefore we need a bit also strong wording in 19.1, clearly on financing and all of this, but also on the financing plans, because this is a baseline. And obviously it shows ODA can be used very strategically to be leveraged up. You know, with small seed fund, you can achieve much more if you do it smartly. And I think that's something I would definitely also bring back to our process here. And lastly, I think if it works, let's bring others in. Because let's bring others in, other countries in, but also let's bring other donors in. Because actually we need both. And so that is on which I will end, so that when we have it in 20 years, in 10 years, so that, or even just for the next COP16, right, that we might see more countries and more donors, and that it still flourishes. So thank you very much for all of us to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you have summarized so beautifully what we have discussed today, but also what BIOFIN has done for the last 10 years. Yeah. I think I'm getting like at least 10 quotes from what you have just said for BIOFIN, which we will continue to use. And thank you again for your really championship, for your great support of EU. Again, I think it was EU's foresight really in 2012 to really see this as, you know, something we need to really start and for future. So that really have come true. So thank you very much. So we have come. A quick one, yes.
I get your newsletter and I read it whenever you send it out. Going forward, I didn't hear you mention local communities. I heard Honorable Florica mention it as a stakeholder group. So in any of the countries are you going to be working with, will the local communities benefit? Thank you.
I think Mexico was one of the examples, but I don't know if you want to.
Just in the briefest of answers, we have a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, PS work, bioeconomy work, where local communities are actively involved. I've seen it with my own eyes, what they've done, making new organic products and doing a lot of stuff, cleaning beaches and being involved. But I think we have to do more. And I think in the next methodology, the new methodology we're going to release, we're going to have more dedicated attention for working with indigenous groups and local communities. So we need to scale up this particular part. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for reminding us of the importance of local level work, which will continue to strengthen that aspect through BIOFIN as well. So now we have come to the end of the event. I hope all of you have gained some inspiration and new ideas for financing nature in your own country towards closing this finance gap, which we have at $700 billion per year at least. And if you haven't embarked on Biodiversity Finance Plan, if you work with the government, please do let us know. GF has some funding which can cover most of the non-BIOFIN GF eligible countries. So with that, I'd like to close this meeting. Thank you again for being here.
meant what I said. Yeah, yeah. I really meant